So we want to come in, look at that specific work environment and come up with specific controls or measures to make sure employees stay safe. But on the back end, the employers have reduced work comp, they have less risk exposure.
Welcome to the Self-Insurance Podcast, brought to you by CRMBC. Every week, we're interviewing industry experts, restaurant operators, and brokers to talk about the world of workers' comp self-insurance in California. It is my great honor to welcome Mike Geosano today. He is the president of O.S.T.S. Consulting, and they are an occupational safety and training system. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Kaya.
So to start off, tell us a little bit about your background so we know who we're talking to.
Okay, very good. I grew up in the safety supply business around 1990. Coming out of college, I got into the safety consulting side of workplace safety. Long story short, 1990 to today, we're a comprehensive safety consulting firm assisting employers in most all industries, restaurant, manufacturing, distribution, services, construction, with safety and health concerns, with the primary goal of keeping their employees well, going home with all their fingers and toes at the end of the day.
Do you do much with restaurants?
Quite a bit. Yeah. Restaurants have unique hazards as opposed to a manufacturing firm. So you have the slips, trips, and falls, workplace violence, which is a new regulation, interaction with the public, which draws us now to this new regulation with CalOSHA and the indoor heat illness regs.
And that's what you're going to talk about today. Thank you for coming on, because you're going to tell us a little bit about the history of this regulation, but there was a new reg that just hit at the end of July. So it's really on the radar of restaurant owners right now, especially during the heat and with our kitchens and all of that kind of stuff. So will you first give us a brief history of where this reg has gone?
Sure. California is unique. CalOSHA likes to be on the forefront in the OSHA world. So FedOSHA doesn't have anything in place. So if you're in the state of California, CalOSHA has been working on the heat illness prevention regs since really 2016. Outdoor heat illness prevention's been on the books for 4 or 5 years now, so a lot of employers are familiar with it. Maybe some of our restaurants are familiar with it. But just this year, end of July, Office of Administrative Law approved CalOSHA's version that we see now of indoor heat illness prevention for those employees working under a roof with 4 walls.
And tell us the big picture of what this regulation requires.
Okay, so it's very unique. If we're working outdoor in direct sunlight, makes sense. It gets hot. We're sweating a lot. We lose a lot of fluids, and we start experiencing heat illness concerns. Now you take that indoors. Because, we have shade and we have water. It sounds nice. However, you get into a restaurant environment and in a kitchen where we have ovens and stoves and fryers generating or radiating a lot of heat. We have employees working in kitchens that are above 82 degrees, in some cases 90, 95 degrees, and they are losing a lot of fluids and experiencing health-related concerns.
So the IHIPP, tell us about that and where does it apply for restaurant owners?
Okay, this regulation is very, very specific. CalOSHA struggled with developing the language that was acceptable to the Standards Board and to the Office of Administrative Law. But what they came up with in this current version of the regulation that is effective at 82 degrees, we as a restaurant need to establish this program and all the elements that go along with the program, which we'll talk about today.
And tell me a little bit about what triggers we've talked about the temperature. Right. What else triggers the application of this in a restaurant environment?
So for the most part today, we're talking about restaurants and the indoor environment related to those restaurants. We may have some restaurants in the outdoor environments when it's hot outside. Those employees working and serving clients in that outdoor environment have to deal with the existing outdoor heat illness regulation. But today we're talking about those employees inside the restaurant and really for the most part in the kitchens. right, where we have that radiating heat. So at 82 degrees, the standard is triggered. We must comply with it. Now, there's additional triggers written into the regulation, which is going to apply to some of our members, where the temperature reaches 87 degrees or more, or the heat index reaches 87 degrees or more, or if the temperature is 82 degrees and those employees are working in or near equipment that is radiating heat. Additional regulations referred to as assessments and control measures in the standard now apply.
So tell us, let's get more in the weeds about the specific requirements of what the restaurant owner needs to do.
If restaurant owner determines that, yes, we have an indoor environment that exceeds 82 or we're meeting this 87 degree trigger, we need to look at the standard, and just like most all other OSHA regulations, we need to evaluate the hazard. We need to objectively determine what the hazard is. Is it 82 degrees? Is it 85 degrees? Is it 95 degrees? What is that hazard? Document that, and then develop program and policy that talks to those specific hazardous environments. And that policy is also going to talk to the control measures on how we're going to protect our employees, in this case, from heat illness exposure.
So we talk about assessments and controls. What specifically would be a good assessment and control program?
So in the restaurant environment, again, going back to the kitchens, some of it may appear to be straightforward, but it's probably not as straightforward as it looks on paper. So we look at our kitchens and we can easily say today that, well, let's just install air conditioning, or let's increase the airflow of our air conditioning systems in the kitchens. Well, some of our restaurant owners are going to say, well, we don't even have air conditioning in the kitchen. Okay, well, that's a challenge. Okay, so if we don't have AC and we find that it's infeasible to install AC or increase the flow of AC into that work area, what about fans? Can we just move air through our kitchen just to help cool the environment? Maybe we're just taking the heat from the ovens and the stoves and the fryers and just moving it outside or moving it into the general restaurant and maintaining that air. Or we can consider heat removal hoods. A lot of restaurants already have that. You have removable hoods over, our open flame equipment. Some have them over the ovens, over the fryers, just taking the heat from inside the room and exhausting it out. Those are engineering type controls that must be considered first.
Do you get into when you go into a restaurant and you're trying to help them troubleshoot this? And I'm sure I can already hear some of the operators saying, I can't find a cost effective, or this is going to be daunting to my operation. So what do you do in those situations where there's a reg that comes out? And not saying it's not important. It's important. People should be working in safe environments, but this must happen not just with this regulation, but in other ones too. What do you do in those situations?
So that's a great question. So we've been in business since 1990. And my mantra is, we do it right or we don't do it. So when it comes to safety, our primary goal is to take care of the employees. So we want to come in and we want to assess the specific hazard that's associated with that specific work environment. Now, from a business owner standpoint, up front, that may look like, okay, well, that looks good. We do care about our employees. We want to take care of our employees. However, there are business matters to consider. Right? It's an expense, or could be viewed as an expense. So we want to come in, look at that specific work environment and come up with specific controls or measures to make sure employees stay safe. But on the back end, the employers have reduced work comp. They have less risk exposure to, CalOSHA issues, regulating these work environments. So we want to come in and assess those and put specific plans in place, rather than an employer going online and downloading a program or watching an online training program that is canned. It doesn't apply to them specifically. So that's how we operate, very, very specific to each work environment.
So speaking of which, what are the employee training requirements for the indoor heat regulation?
Very, very similar to outdoor, but the goal for the employees is to empower them with information to stay safe. So we need to talk to employees for the regulation about what heat illness is. Some people don't even know what that means, right? So we need to explain what heat illness is. It's cramps, it's fainting, it's heat exhaustion, it's heat stroke. But from there, identifying what those potential illnesses are, we need to talk about signs and symptoms so they could recognize signs and symptoms so we could stay ahead of it. If we're getting warm or we're feeling a little dizzy, well, let's just take 5 minutes. Let's get some water, cool down, and get back to work, and everything will be fine because our bodies are very well adapted to controlling things like that. So we're going to talk about signs and symptoms recognized. We're going to talk to employees about frequently drinking water so we don't get dehydrated. Again, staying ahead of the curve. We need to talk to employees about rest breaks, that if they feel like they're getting overheated, that they do have the opportunity to take a break, to cool down. Again, staying on top, staying ahead. Also included in training are all the employee-related elements that we need to discuss, but we need to talk to supervisors so supervisors are well aware of what their responsibility is as an employee applies to their employee safety. Making sure they are drinking, encouraging employees to drink water, encouraging employees to stay in the rest break until their symptoms fully subside before they go back to work. So there are many elements that are required, but those are the hot topics.
And there's a lot of natural consequences of not complying with this, which is having injured workers, increased workers' comp claims, things like that. But what are the penalties, or what happens if you don't comply and CalOSHA comes in and investigates?
So, great question. Mostly what I do in my career these days is defend employers from CalOSHA citations. So how an investigation works, CalOSHA inspector shows up to an operation via employee complaint, an employee injury or illness. It could be a referral, it could be a programmed inspection, but they show up and they have protocol to follow, introduce themselves, but then start checking their boxes on their checklists of, can I see your IPP? Can I see your indoor heat illness prevention program? What about your emergency action plan? Do you have a need for a lockout tagout program? Do your employees wear respirators? So they're walking through their checklist of items that they need to ask for and review from a particular work environment. And then let's dial that into indoor heat illness specifically. They're going to ask to see the program. They're going to ask to see training records. What control measures have they put in place to, get that kitchen down below 82 or close to? And if we get it close to 82, but we can't get under, what did you do to help employees avoid any potential heat illness concerns? They ask for all those items. If the employer doesn't or cannot produce the requested items, then those could turn into citations potentially. If they're investigating and there's no injury or illness, you could say, okay, the program doesn't exist. It's a general violation. It could be a few $100 citation. If you don't have training records, no injury, it could be a few $100. However, if we have an illness, 911 is called, an employee is transported to ER, maybe he's admitted to the hospital for IV hydration, then we're talking about accident-related serious citations. Those all start at $18,000. They can go up to $25,000 in an accident situation. So 18 to 25. And then there are special categories. If an employer continues to have challenges with safety and health, those penalties could go through the roof. They can go up to $140,000 each if we have repeated.
Yeah, so this is something that people really need to take seriously. And since it's new, there's a ton of support and documents that are being sent out. What other resources do you point people to understand this and understand the documents and reports that they need to do? Are there resources out there?
Absolutely. We always like to point our clients to the CalOSHA's publications page, because as you said, they have a lot of free resources that our tax monies have paid for them to develop for us. So there's a model program. Employers can download a model indoor heat illness prevention program. There's a lot of red text in there where the employer just completes the specifics in that program and fill in the blanks, so to speak, where all that red text is asking for site-specific information. please don't download the program and just print it out and put it in a binder. That's not compliant. You have to interact with that program. But fundamentally, where the rubber meets the road and safety in general, and especially as it relates back to mitigating or eliminating injury and illnesses and mitigating and eliminating potential CalOSHA citations, is employee training. That's where empower the employees with information so they know how to keep themselves safe. And we have no issues. It's fundamentally simple.
Yeah. Mike, thank you so much for talking about this really timely topic, and your contact info is up there. So that's great. So if people want to reach out to you directly, but we're also, CRMBC is also offering those resources, and we hope to work with you a lot in the future, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Kaya, thank you very much for having me on today, and I appreciate the time.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us for the Self-Insurance Podcast, brought to you by CRMBC. If there's a topic you'd like to learn more about, or if you have any questions, just email us at info@crmbc.com. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and join us again next week for more tips on self-insurance.